And welcome to my lecture. My name is Lynn Felix, and I'm going to be covering convergent evolution today. The two key characters that we're going to be looking at today, or species, I should say, is the thylacine, which is an extinct marsupial, and the gray wolf, which is a Canis lupus. So looking at these, first off, we need to know what is convergent evolution, since we're talking about that today. And convergent evolution is a process in which unrelated organisms evolve similar traits due to living in similar environments or fulfilling similar ecological notes. Our textbook that we've been reading throughout the semester, the definition for that, for convergent evolution, is the evolutionary origin of similar derived characteristics in species whose most recent common ancestor did not possess such characteristics. So when we're looking at and talking about convergent evolution, what do we mean? What are the types of convergent evolution that are out there? So on the slide here, I've listed for you morphological convergence, behavioral convergence, physiological convergence, and ecological convergence. And I've also given you examples of each. So we're going to take a look at that. We have morphological convergence is when different species evolve similar physical traits. So up at the top here, we have bat wings, right? So wings on bats and wings on birds. Even though they're different species, they have the morphological convergence there. Behavioral convergence is when a species develops similar behaviors. And in this case, we're looking at primates using tools versus a bird using tools. Both are using a stick. Physiological convergence is when we have similar internal systems that evolve independently. So in this case, I gave you guys an example of kidneys in kangaroo rats and kidneys in gerbils. And then we have ecological convergence, which is unrelated animals occupy similar niches and evolve similar strategies. And in this case, we're looking at the turtle that's streamlined body and has flippers, and it's reptile. And then we have the dolphin, which also has a streamlined body and flippers, and it's mammal. Moving on, is it in the DNA? If we're looking at molecular convergence, we're looking at genes or proteins that evolve in similar ways across different species. So convergent evolution and DNA, different species can develop similar traits through changes in DNA. So helpful traits are passed down over generations through what we call natural selection. Sometimes the same traits evolve in different species, even if their DNA changes differently. And so I put a quote here from a scientist, Dr. Natalie Cooper, and she says, until we understood DNA and how it evolves, there were a lot of things that we thought were very closely related because they looked very similar, but they turned out to be very distantly related. So let's apply this quote to a real world example. At first glance, we looking at a dolphin and a shark, they look similar, right? They seem closely related, but they're not, okay? Both have sleek torpedo-shaped bodies, dorsal fins, and live in the ocean. Dolphins are mammals, so they breathe air, they give live birth, and nurse their young. Sharks are fish with gills, cartilage skeletons, and they lay eggs or give birth differently. So their similar shapes are due to what we call convergent evolution, not shared ancestry, just like the quote says. DNA revealed. They're only lookalikes. All right, so let's get into the thylacine. The thylacine is a carnivorous marsupial, and it is deemed extinct by the Red List. The order is the Despermorphia. The family is the Thylacide. The genus is the Thylacinus, and the species is the Thylacinus cynophilius. Salathinus phenocelius actually means dog-headed, pouched dog, believe it or not. And just so you guys know, because it is a marsupial, both males and females of this species had a pouch. Yes, both. So the female, she had her pouch that would face backwards, and it would protect the young. The males had the pouch to protect the genitalia. The thylacine was an apex predator, so it did not have any other predators that it was prey for. It did have prey of its own. And it tended to eat birds, reptiles, small kangaroos, wallabies, possums, small mammals. Its lifespan was about 8 to 12 years. And it was what we call a pursuit and ambush hunter. It was a silent, solitary stalker. It mostly did all of its work during the nocturnal time. So it slept a lot during the days. It did like to sunbathe, believe it or not. But yeah, it was nocturnal and mostly active at night. So if we're looking at the thylacine, let's take a look at the thylacine in action. So the thylacine here is pictured running after a rabbit as prey because it is a smaller animal, right? So the mode of locomotions for the thylacine is its quadrupedal. It walked around on all four legs. It had a steady, stiff-legged gait to move across open terrain. It had specialized locomotion traits, hopping or bounding. When startled or moving quickly, the thylacine could perform a bipedal hop, similar to kangaroos, like on the two back feet, it would hop. Hind limbs were longer than the forelimbs, giving it a sloped back and enabling occasional short upright hopping or standing. Some observers even reported thylacines balancing on their hind legs and tail, a behavior seen in kangaroos. So the thylacine were thought to kill livestock, so bounties were put out on them. The widespread rumors of them being livestock killers, the introduction of the dingo, and the hunting of this species led to its extinction. Conservation efforts were put into place once public opinion swayed into their favor, just 2 months before the last known thylacine died at Hobart's Bermus Zoo on September 7th, 1936. So I did highlight for you public opinion here. And if you guys click on it, it'll take you to an article that shows a thylacine with a bird in its mouth. And so it's kind of misleading. And I don't know if that had anything to do with how it swayed public opinion to think that the thylacine was a livestock killer and maybe drove it to be hunted more. Because as we know, the thylacine went extinct because of human hunting, because of us. All right, the ecological niche for the thylacine. I'm going to go ahead and play the video here. There's no sound, so I'll let you guys watch the video. And it's an actual recorded, the last thylacine in the zoo in 1936. And as I read off the information on the ecological niche. So you'll see that the geographic location is Australia, Papua New Guinea, and Tasmania. The thylacine, its habitat is hilly country, forest and shrubs, forested areas and grasslands, savanna grasslands, and rainforest. The habitat regions is temperate and terrestrial, and the continent is what we call Oceania or Australian fauna region. This is the footage of the last known thylacine in captivity. So the thylacine was an apex predator and had no other predators, but did have to compete for food with the dingo, Tasmanian devils, and the quolls. Okay. The habitat requirements for the thylacine was that it needed the dense coverage for stalking its prey, tall grass, underbrush, and forest cover. It had to have access to prey availability, so the habitat needed to support a healthy herbivore population, as this is what they preyed on. And obviously water availability, reliable water sources nearby. And believe it or not, the thylacine can survive in what we call arid zones. So this is a really cool video to look at, and you can see the movements and a live thylacine, which nowadays it's extinct. We don't have that opportunity to view this animal, such a beautiful creature, one of my favorites. All right, moving on. Here's some pictures I pulled that shows the big open mouth that the thylacine had, its stance here, and then the awesome stripes that it had on its back. So if we're looking at adaptations to environment, camouflage, right? So the thylacine, it has a striped back. It helped it blend into the grassy and forested environments, especially when stalking its prey, camouflage. It had strong legs and stamina. Long muscular legs allowed for long distance travel and quiet stalking. Its bounding and trotting gait was ideal for covering large territories in search of food. Large jaw and sharp teeth could open its mouth up to 80 degrees, allowing it to catch and eat larger prey. It had sharp teeth for slicing meat, perfect for a carnivorous diet. It was nocturnal and crepuscular activity, which meant it was active mostly at night or twilight, which helped avoid daytime heat and human activity. They were a shy creature. They didn't really like to interact with people. And obviously they're solitary, so they had solitary behavior. They lived and hunted alone, which reduced their competition for food in sparse habitats. Moving on, we're going to take a look at now and give you some information on the gray wolf. Okay, so the gray wolf is order Carnivia. The family is the Canidae. The genus is the Canis, and the species is Canis lupus. So the gray wolf was removed from the endangered list, and now it is considered of least concern. Although the Mexican gray wolf is still considered endangered. It is a carnivore. It is an apex predator. And it has prey, and the prey that it goes after is large ungulates, which are like the deer, the elk, the moose, and the caribou. It is a pack hunter, so it works in cooperative packs. It strategically chases, flanking, and biting to weaken its and kill its prey. And it's an opportunistic scavenger, so it'll eat carrion when there is no fresh prey. The competitors of the wolf are the coyotes, cougars, grizzly bears, and humans. And the lifespan of the gray wolf is about 6 to 8 years in the wild. So looking at feeding behavior of the wolves, you can see here's a pack of wolves that have finished off or are close to finishing off their prey that they caught. So wolves gorge after a successful hunt, eating up to 20 pounds in one sitting. That's a lot. They regurgitate food for their pups and weaker pack members. They use toolless feeding, which means they use strong jaws and sharp teeth to tear flesh and bones. If we're looking at key adaptations to environment, the gray wolves have things such as thick fur coats. It's double layered. They have a dense undercoat for insulation and outer guard hairs that repel moisture, so it's ideal for colder climates like the Arctic and the boreal forests. They have large paws with webbing, and it acts like snowshoes, so it helps the wolves walk on snow without sinking in, and it provides traction on ice or even uneven terrain. They have strong legs and endurance, and they're built for long distance travel. They can cover over 30 miles in a day. They have long limbs and muscular bodies that support chasing and pack hunting. They have teeth and powerful jaws, carnassial teeth for shearing meat and strong molars for crushing bone, and the bite force is strong enough to take down large prey. They have keen senses, excellent hearing and smell that help them detect prey from miles away. Good night vision that supports nocturnal or crepuscular hunting, and of course the camouflaged fur color, grizzly gray, brown black, or white fur, which blends in with forests, tundras, and Rocky Mountain terrain. So did you guys know that gray wolves eat blueberries? Yes, they do. So this footage was taken by the Voyeurs Wurf Project, and I'm just going to play it for you as I finish reading. And so they have monitored the behaviors of the gray wolf voyagers at Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. So after heavy monitoring of the wolf behavior, they have come to this conclusion that high fruit consumption likely indicates shortage of animal prey for free-ranging red foxes, wolves, and probably for other canids, such as coyotes. This is especially true in the summer months for gray wolves. So if we're out here in the wild and we see gray wolves foraging on blueberries, it's probably because they're using it as a food source. So believe it or not, wolves also regurgitate blueberries for their pups to eat. So biologist Austin Homix shares his experience, and I put the quote in there for you guys. As he watched from a distance as several pups gathered around an adult wolf, licking up at its mouth. This behavior stimulates adult wolves to throw up a recent meal. Sure enough, the adult began vomiting, and the pups eagerly ate what accumulated on the ground. After the wolves left, Holmes got closer and saw that the regurgitated piles were purely of partially chewed blueberries. So yes, carnivorous wolves eat blueberries. Right. The ecological niche that the gray wolf fits is the geographical location is North America, in parts of Alaska, Northern Rockies, Great Lakes, limited areas in the Pacific Northwest, Europe, and Asia. The habitat is found in forests, tundras, grasslands, and mountains across North America, Europe, and Asia, and it requires large territories to support prey needs. The habitat regions are temperate forests, tundra, mountains, grasslands, and prairies. And so the habitat requirements here for the gray wolf are it needs to have the large territory. It needs the vast ranges in order to find the prey and avoid conflict with humans or other packs. There has to be abundant prey, right? A steady population of large herbivores for them to eat, okay? Vegetation or terrain for coverage. They got to make sure that they can provide cover for stalking prey, for putting together their dens and raising pups. Access to fresh water. They need fresh water sources for drinking and for cooling off in the warmer months. Low human disturbance. Wolves avoid highly populated or highly developed areas. They need remote or wild habitats to minimize conflict. Suitable den sites. So wolves need suitable den sites that require places like hollow logs, rocks, crevices, or dens. The gray wolf is what we call a keystone species. So it controls herbivore numbers, allows vegetation to recover, and benefits other species like scavengers. It also shapes ecosystems through trophic cascades, which we did see and learn about when we looked at when they reintroduced the wolf to Yellowstone, right? All right, so the gray wolf in action, modes of locomotion for the gray wolf. I put some cool pictures there of them moving and grooving. So we see here that they are quadrupedal. They're walking and trotting. Wolves typically move using a steady trot, allowing them to travel distances of up to 30 miles a day while conserving energy. So trotting is their most efficient gait that they have. Running and sprinting, they can reach speeds up to 35 to 40 miles per hour for short bursts of time when they chase. They used mainly to stay close on prey once it has been isolated or weakened. Loping, a ground covering gait that's faster than a trot, but slower than a sprint. Wolves use this when tracking prey over long distances. And then finally, pacing and stealthy movement. Wolves can move silently when stalking, keeping their bodies low and using slow, deliberate steps. So adaptations for locomotion, long muscular legs and large paws for traction and snow travel, endurance-focused physiology, efficient lungs, and the cardiovascular system. All right, so if we're going to pull both those species together and we're going to look at convergent evolution and adaptations of both, we're going to take a look at how the thylacine and the gray wolf have made those adaptations, okay? So morphological adaptations that have taken place, you'll see here, the skulls of the gray wolf and the thylacine look very similar. So the craniofacial structure, both species evolved elongated snouts and robust jaws, suited for capturing and processing vertebrae. Their skulls are notably similar in shape, a result of what we call convergent evolution, driven by dietary needs. The thylacine and gray wolf developed comparable dental arrangements, including pronounced canines and carnassial teeth, facilitating efficient meat consumption, and obviously the body form. Each species possesses a streamlined body, long legs, and a deep chest. Adaptations that support endurance and agility during hunting. Behavioral adaptations. You'll see here is a thylacine mama with her babies and a wolf with her babies. So predatory strategies, both animals evolve stalking and ambushing techniques to hunt prey, relying on stealth and sudden burst of speed. Territorially, they maintained and defended territories, a behavior crucial for resource allocation and breeding opportunities. And parental care, extended care for offspring was observed in both species, ensuring higher survival rates for their young. And finally, physiological adaptations, sensory capabilities. Enhanced senses of smell and hearing in both species aided in detecting prey and navigating their environments. Metabolic efficiency, adaptations in energy metabolism allowed both predators to sustain prolonged periods of activity during hunts. And thermoregulation, Fur density and body size in both species were adapted to their respective climates, aiding in temperature regulation. All right. If we're looking at different ancestry, this is the final word on convergent evolution, guys. So different ancestry. You look here, you'll see that there's the skeleton of the Canis lupus, the gray wolf, and the thylacine. So the gray wolf is a placental mammal in the canid family, and it's related to dogs and foxes. Different ancestry. The thylacine was a marsupial and part of an entirely different evolutionary lineage, more closely related to kangaroos and Tasmanian devils. Their last common ancestor lived over 160 million years ago. Similar environments equal similar challenges. Both animals lived as top predators in environments with large open spaces or forested habitats. They prey like deer, kangaroos, or smaller herbivores, a need for stealth endurance and strong sensory detection. And despite their vast different evolutionary backgrounds, the thylacine and the gray wolf look and act similarly because they evolved under similar survival pressures. This is not due to shared ancestry, but because nature often solves similar problems with similar adaptations. So when we're looking at, and our final thing that we're going to cover is genetic mutations happen by chance, right? These are random changes in DNA that can produce new traits like longer legs, sharper teeth, or better hearing. But natural selection is not random. It is a filtering process, and it is traits that help an animal survive and reproduce in its environment, and they are passed on more often. So that concludes our lecture on convergent evolution. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a good day.